Welcome to MCN. It's that time of year again where we speak to our MCN team members who've been running long-term test bikes and find out what they've been like to live with. So, it's the turn of young Dan today. Hi Dan. This is your KTM?
It is indeed.
And what we're going to do, everybody, is for each of the owners of long-term test bikes, we're going to ask them to tell us their top 10 best and worst things about the bike. So it should all be the same format and nice and easy to understand and compare. And I'm going to be going from a list that they've given me, so we can work off the list now. So this is a list of your favourite things about this bike.
That's right.
Going from number 10 down to number 1. So number 10, without any further ado, accessories. Tell me about your accessories.
Yeah, the accessory range is actually really good. I mean, they call them KTM power parts, which I always like that name, but there's a couple of things that I've added this year that have really impressed me. Chiefly is that little fly screen just in front of you there.
This one here with the sticker on.
That's it, yeah. Yep. So it's around about 80 quid, and it just sort of tidies up that bit behind the dash, and it's actually done wonders for getting the wind off your shoulders when you're riding. But and you know, outside of that, I've also done a tank bag and I've done some panniers. But what I like most is just how easy it is to install. You know, you can actually install everything with the toolkit under the seat, which is really handy. Yeah. And it's sort of, you know, I'm not that good at using tools, and everything's taken no more than about 15 minutes to do.
Cool. I'd just like to say though, £80 for a little piece of plastic sounds like a right rip-off.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Fine. Fair enough. But in terms of doing a job,
yeah, exactly,
it's actually made a world of difference.
Okay, number 9, styling.
Yes,
I mean, you like the way it looks?
It looks great.
It does. Really nice.
I mean, it's a bit dirty now. It rained this morning on the way to work, but when it's clean, like all this orange down here and the orange frame versus the black stuff, like it looks so good. Yeah. When I get it out of the garage every morning and it's just sort of ticking over, and you've got those angry sort of jagged lightning bolt headlights. Yeah, yeah. I just think, like, it just looks the business. It just looks really good. Yeah,
it's an aggressive looking bike. I like it as well.
Absolutely.
The dash, you like the dash? That's number 8.
Yeah, so I was originally sort of quite critical of the dash. Yeah. You know, I did the first test, and in my early reports I was like, it's a bit difficult to get round, and I had the Super Duke GT a few years ago, which had a different dash, which I thought was easier. Yeah. But now I've had the bike for a while. I mean, I've done about 6,500 miles. It's an absolute doddle to get round, and it's super clear. And I think for me personally, compared to things like BMWs and stuff like that, actually on reflection it's so much cleaner and easy to use, and it changes depending on the light, and it's just a really nice thing. It's like having a nice sort of iPad.
Talking of on reflection, does it glare in the sun, or is it all right?
All good.
Yeah.
Never had an issue with that.
Good. Right. Number 7, comfort.
Yes.
What's the comfort like?
Well, it's really good, as is the trend of all of these points. But yeah, you'd think for something that's got you know, 1290 Super Duke R as the name, that it's going to be uncompromising and sort of a bit extreme, and comfort would go out the window. But actually, this seat, you have a squidge of that, loads and loads of padding. That's
lovely.
And it's a bit more on your wrists than the GT, and the pegs are a bit higher, but it's not uncomfortable. You know, I went to the TT on it, and it was about 170 odd mile ride to the ferry and stuff like that. I could have done it in one sitting. It's just put the cruise control and it's just super easy. And
that's the joy of a Super Naked, isn't it? You've got super bike performance in a bike that's easy to live with. It's not too cramped. Okay, you haven't got a lot of wind protection, but you've got more of a sense of speed as well, haven't you? So it feels like it's doing the speed. It really is.
Absolutely.
Right. Next point, number 6. It's manageable.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So, again, you might think that with all the sort of the orange and the stripes and the R's written all over it, that it's going to be a bit of an animal. Brute. But it's not really. It's a complete pussycat when you need it to be. I'm sure you know, because you'd have ridden these. Yeah, they're really nice and plush. They're lovely. Yeah, and sort of, you know, the engine and the ride and things like that, when you want it to be calm, it's so refined. And considering it's a big twin, you know, it's not that vibey. It doesn't clatter too much, and around town, sort of, it's narrow enough to get through gaps, and sort of what I suppose I mean by that point is it's just, you don't have to think about riding it at low speed. It's just
not awkward.
No, it's just easy.
No, it is
really
easy. Yeah, I agree. Number 5 of your best things about this bike, heated grips.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They're good.
Yes, so I really hate the cold.
Yep.
Really hate the cold. I mean, like anything below 27 degrees and I'll have a jumper on.
Yeah.
So heated grips are really important for me, and these are like the best that I've tried. I think KTM in general are just really good at heated grips. So you get three settings, and you do it through the dash, and sort of this sort of 14 degrees, 15 degrees, if you want to use it, you know, the lowest setting is more than enough before you start getting sweaty palms. But when it's really cold, if you have it on that hottest setting, it's
Scorchio.
Yeah, Scorchio, and if you leave it on by accident, you notice like it gets almost like uncomfortably warm because they're so powerful. So yeah, if you've got one of these, then like make sure the heated grips are on because they're so good.
Number 4, the finish of the bike, the way it's finished.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been using this bike all year in all weathers, and all right, it's a bit dirty now, but actually underneath the sort of the very surface grim from this morning, there's no rust. There's, you know, it once you've washed it, it still looks brand new out of the crate. The chain, you know, with the, you know, regular lube and sort of tidying has been good as gold, and it's just, you know, there's no ugly gaps. Everything's sort of finished quite nicely. I've already spoken about how the dash is like a lovely iPad. Everything sort of just feels premium. What
about the satin finish on the paint? Does that come up all right, or does it show finger marks? Or?
No, not really. No? I mean, yeah, it comes up really nicely, and I think it's a nice contrast to the sort of gloss plastic underneath it.
These really nice colours.
The only thing, now you've jogged my memory, is sometimes if you use like a protectant or like a water repellent, if you put too much on or something like that, you can sometimes get streaks
stain it
in that. But you just give it another wipe and it's gone.
Yeah, nice. Number 3, you've written anti-dive forks.
Yes.
Go on then.
So this is the Evo version. So it's got electronic suspension, whereas the standard one's got manually adjustable stuff. And as an option, you can get anti-dive forks. And basically, as the name would suggest, it stops the forks diving when you give it a big handful of brakes. And you know, I thought it was a bit.
Stops it completely, or just reduces
a little. So basically, it has the feel of just a set of rock hard front forks. So it's you do feel them compress a bit. So that
must be done with compression damping, is it?
Yeah.
Not preload.
No. But when you're going along, it doesn't feel rock hard. You know, it doesn't feel like you're riding a race bike. It's just when you brake, you don't get that dive at the front end. And when I first used it, I found it a bit uncomfortable because I've been used to, obviously.
You feel like it sits too far back?
No, not at all.
Still feels natural.
It just feels really stable.
Yeah.
And when I went to Snetterton on the track day earlier this year, I left it on, and just sort of when you really do give it a big handful of brake, just gives you lots
of support.
So good. That's probably, I know it's in my top 3 obviously, but it's perhaps something that I've come to take for granted now, just how good it is. I know for a fact when I get on another bike at some point,
you're going to feel like you're doing a massive endo.
Yeah, or I'm riding a pogo stick.
Yeah. Number 2, the handling.
Yes. Yeah, so as I've just said, got electronic suspension, and that's great because you get that versatility and you can have it as soft or as hard as you want, dependent on the scenario.
Press of a button, nice and easy.
Perfect for me who doesn't like getting his hands dirty. And what that means is, you know, when you take it to a track day, you can stiffen it right up and it's razor sharp for going around corners, but also on the road you can soften it off and it is still razor sharp. You've got a really nice taut chassis, and the bike feels really nicely balanced as well.
Yep.
And they've managed to sort of give you 177 brake horsepower, but it feels like an 890 when you're riding it. It just feels just so nimble, and you know, I talked about manageable earlier. It doesn't feel intimidating when you get out to those.
I know what you mean. I got to ride the RR last year, and that reminded me of the 890 because it was so composed.
Yeah. It's just really, really impressive for something as powerful as it is. Yes, it rewards sort of faster riding, but it lets you still feel like you're in charge of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for a big powerful bike like this, that's what you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your favourite thing about KTM 1290 Super Duke R is the engine performance.
It had to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a stonker. It's brilliant. So I had the GT in the past, which is again, a 1301cc V-twin. So I knew what I was getting myself in for. But this is just that little bit fruitier than the GT again, and it's, yeah, like I said, it's really easy when you want it to be. When you don't want it to be easy, it just sort of eggs you on. You know, like, go that bit faster, you know, be that little bit more misbehaving. And it sounds, you know, it sounds like a muscle car. And but it does it without being sort of, you know, super vibey or anything like that. It just shunts forward. It's just so much torque, so much power, and sometimes it catches you out because when you're doing sort of motorway speeds and stuff, it's barely even, you know, above tick over. So sometimes you do actually lose that sense of high speed because the engine underneath you just doesn't feel like it's even working. And then when I went to Snetterton again, and when you could let it off the lead, I did the 300 format, so obviously the really long straights. You'd get a 600 alongside you, and then you just open the taps and you're gone. Off you go. Yeah.
I agree. The engine is fantastic on these bikes. Just seemingly limitless power, and you've got all those electronics as well, just to hold it in as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're all your good points. So let's talk about the things you're not so keen on, and this really is what separates this kind of test from a normal road test.
Yes.
Because a normal road test, we probably could have identified all of these points, but living with a bike is completely different, which is why we do it. Okay, so your number 10 worst thing on this bike is chain adjustment, you said?
Yeah, so it hasn't needed the chain adjusting too often, which is why it's at the bottom of the list. But when you do it, because it's a single-sided swing arm, you have to put it on a paddock stand. Yeah. So getting it on the stand's quite easy. It's just essentially a pin straight through the axle and then up it goes. But then the adjustment, rather than your traditional setup, is a C-spanner. Yeah. And you kind of you're going that way or up or down, dependent on whether you want it tighter or looser. But the mechanism is quite it's quite stiff in there. So sometimes you can give it a bit of force, and then before you know it, you slip round,
and it's too much,
and it's massively tight, and then you're going the other way, and then you've gone too far the other way, and it's just it's frustrating more than anything. Yeah. It's, you know, there's much less to undo or get your hands dirty or anything like that, but it's just an annoyance, shall we say. And because it's on that single stand, actually, I'll just add, it's and all the weight, if you like, has gone that pin. When you do give it a lot of force, it does wobble a little bit on that stand, and it's an 18 grand bike, and I don't want it to fall on me or it to get damaged, and it just makes me uneasy sometimes.
Okay, number 9, motorway gearing. You've put
so the engine is really nice and smooth, but there is an issue when you're on a motorway. So getting into 6th on a motorway kind of only makes sense once you're on a motorway with no restriction. So 70 miles an hour, it's fine. But if you come across like traffic, or you're on a smart motorway or contraflow or anything like that, drop to like 60, and suddenly 6th is too high a gear, and it's sort of jerking a little bit, and it's clattering a bit, and you find yourself in a sort of weird, sort of awkward zone. I mean, I would always drop down.
5th.
Yeah, knock it down to 5th just for sort of comfort. But if you're in that, as we have all been in, that, you know, when your motorway is speeding up, slowing down, it just sometimes it's a bit awkward, a bit annoying.
So the gearing's not bang on really for what?
Yeah, for the road and stuff.
For the road.
Yeah.
Okay, automatic indicators you've got for the next point? Yeah,
so I think automatic indicators are pointless anyway.
When you say automatic, you mean they're self-cancelling?
Self-cancelling, yes. Because I think we as human beings, I know sometimes you do forget, but on the whole...
So do they stay on for 3 flashes and come off, or is it lean sensitive?
It's pretty much, it just stays on for a couple of flashes. So it's...
Can you make them stay on for longer if you hold the button?
I don't think you can. I mean, apologies to anyone in the comments if you can do that and I haven't realised over time, but from personal experience, when I flick them on, if I'm going around a big roundabout, it doesn't stay on long enough to get round the roundabout.
Cars could pull out, so they don't know what you're doing.
Or a motorway slip road, it doesn't stay on long enough for that. So it's a small gripe, but when you've experienced it over 8-10 months and 6,500 miles, it does start to grate a bit. Okay,
number 7, fuel gauge.
Yes. Yeah, it's a funny one, that. So actually the fuel gauge itself is really clear, but the sort of the fuel warning light, if you like, comes on when the range indicator hits 50 miles. When I first got it, I thought, well, 50 miles, that's loads of fuel. but actually 50 miles is never actually 50 miles on this bike. So you get a big warning, saying, fill up with fuel now, which is almost like it's breaking down. You get a big sort of warning triangle. And then what I've had in the past is I've left here with 50 miles, I've got 10 miles down the road, and all of a sudden the ranger's saying it's got 10 miles left. Well, that's all right round here in Peterborough, but if I was out in the sticks and I set off thinking I had 50 miles and then it runs out in 10 miles, well, that's just not on. So it just sometimes sort of gives you sweaty palms because it really does just start dropping down in chunks.
You just got to assume you've hardly got any petrol. Literally, as soon as the light comes on.
Every time it comes on, straight in the nearest petrol station.
So these next lot are to do with reliability problems, I'd say, probably.
Yeah.
So let's talk about number 6, switchgear.
Yeah, so I mean, sort of reliability issues with KTM was one of the things that I was really keen to sort of find out about this year. I really hoped that they'd sorted it out, because just to do a bit of a history lesson, with the GT I had an issue including I had water ingress in the dash, which then caused the dash to fail, which then knocked out various other components on the bike, and it had to go back and get a new dash, all sorts of headaches. So I was thinking, I really hope they've sorted it with this before they add more electronics on it with the suspension. Unfortunately, I have had some problems. So switchgear first. So it was returned to me from KTM for a bit of service work, and I went to fill it up, and at the petrol station, and I turned the bars and it cut out, and I thought it was a bit weird, and then sort of started it again and moved the bars and it cut out, and I realised when I was turning the bar left, it was applying the kill switch. So had to go back to KTM, unfortunately, and it ended up getting new switchgear. So again, it would have been done under warranty, but I think at the time I'd only done about 3,000 miles. I mean, it was in the summer times, and I'd only had it since February, and it lived in a garage, and I'd looked after it. So all of a sudden I was like, are you kidding? Could you imagine buying this and then getting 3,000 miles down the road and something like that happening?
Okay, switchgear. So next, number 5, electronics.
Yes.
You put. So you're talking about stalling the bike?
Yes. Yeah. So basically, what happened on another occasion was I was coming into a roundabout. I was on the way to Brands Hatch to watch our fellow tester Bruce Dunn on his lovely TZ, and this was right at the very beginning. So I hadn't even had the first service yet, and I stalled it basically going into a roundabout. And it was quite a busy roundabout, so quickly, start it up, get going again, because I don't want to be a sitting duck. And by starting it quickly, I essentially ended up with an error where the system got a bit confused, and the rear shock sort of extended to its tallest setting. Right. And I got to a stop because I had this warning light on the dash, and I had to get off and try and figure out how to stop it. But obviously I'm 5'6", and it's quite tall as it is. I can manage it, but if you're making it taller again, suddenly that starts to get a bit of a concern. And eventually I managed to get it stopped, get it on the stand, and sort of turning it on and off again sorted the problem out. And after consulting KTM, it was sort of a bit of a blip, really. But they said that the way to prevent that happening is, if you do stall, you need to sort of let it go back through all of its checks before you start it again. So let everything talk to everything, and by starting it quickly, I prevented that process from completing, and then it sort of freaked out a bit, which is all right if you're on, if you're in a car park like this.
But if you're at a junction with cars bearing down at you,
you can't do that. And I don't know of any other manufacturer. I can't think of any bike where in the past, if I've stalled it, it hasn't just then been okay if I've just restarted it. So
okay, not so good. Number 4, oil.
Yes. So
what are you going to tell us about oil?
So when I went to Snetterton, I got a bit of an oil spray, basically. So in the afternoon, I looked down at my white boots, and I realised my left boot was a bit blacker than the white one, than the right one, should I say? And essentially, under under sort of the cap where you go to top up the oil, there's a bit of a gap, really. It's not a complete sort of piece, if you know what I mean. It's bolted to the rest of that part of the engine, and that sort of seal there, it was just sort of coming out from underneath there, just in a mist, just enough to sort of do a couple of drips and get onto my boot. And it was more of a mental thing than anything. It's never happened again. It never happened before that. I don't know if it's because it was a really hot day and the bike was under stress because it was on a track, but no one ever wants to see oil coming out of their bike, do they? So that's just something of concern.
Talking of fluids, you're talking about coolant, which is number 3.
Yeah, so I went to Ramsey Sprint whilst I was on the Isle of Man to take part in a bit of sprint racing action, and you have to get the bike scrutineered. They just basically give it a little once over. Yeah. And they pointed out to me that on the right hose there was just a slight coolant weep. So and they showed me it, and basically it's just been dripping out from the end, sort of where the Jubilee clip goes over the pipe. Yeah. And so, I mean, it was a case of simply just nipping it up with a screwdriver, just tightening that clip a bit more, and there's been no more issues. But a few things had happened by that point already. So when I was
you start losing your trust in it a little bit.
When I went to the thing and this bloke sort of pops up from the side and goes, "Oh, you've got a coolant leak there, sir." Yeah. I'm thinking, really?
Something else.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2, hydraulic clutch.
Yes. So this is an issue that's actually affecting me right now. So already this bike has been to a local KTM dealer close to me. I think it's Gear 4. Really nice guys, but basically they helped me out with the clutch before because the biting point was slowly coming back to the bar, to the point where I would have the lever sort of squeezed against the bar and it was still trying to pull me forwards. And and I couldn't get the bike into neutral while it was running or anything like that. So stopped riding it because I didn't want to hurt it. And KTM told me to go there, and basically they diagnosed that there was a bit of air in the system because it's hydraulic. So they bled it. It took about 10 minutes, and it again they would do it under warranty, and then it was fine. But sort of over the next 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles, however long it's been till now, the issues started again. To the point where I'm now kind of back at that same point where it's starting to pull itself in traffic. So
there's nothing there, is there?
No. So obviously, I would imagine there's another problem there. It shouldn't happen at all, but to happen twice in quick succession would tell me that something else needs to occur. But this is going back to KTM in a couple of weeks' time. So they'll get their hands on it and have a proper diagnosis. But it's just disappointing, isn't it? It's really disappointing. So
well, that brings us to the thing you like the least about this bike, number 1, and it's kind of the general reliability of it and kind of value for money. Yeah.
So this bike, as we stand now, is around about 18 grand before you put any options on it. That's a serious whack of change. That's more money than I've got to pay for a bike, and it's a real investment. And if you're paying that sort of money, you expect a level of quality, and this has just let itself down. When it's on song, as I've said to everyone, when it's on song, it's amazing fun. Yeah. But the fact that I have to sort of say when it's on song is not good enough. It should just be good all the time. And what happens with all these little things over time? They're minor inconveniences, but they just they start to get in your head, and you start to lose confidence in it, and you start to worry about, well, what if I decide to ride it into Europe, or what if I go to do the North Coast 500 or whatever? What if this just breaks somewhere? Or what happens when my warranty runs out and then I have to pay for all this stuff? It's just it would concern me as an owner, that's for sure. Yeah, really would.
Well, my last question to you was, I know it's going back very soon. Yes. I was going to ask you if you'd buy one. I think I know your answer.
I wouldn't, unfortunately.
No. You've given it a chance. It's your second KTM.
I mean, look, I like KTMs, and if you are serious about a Super Duke R, maybe you could get the standard one, because it doesn't have the electronic suspension, but then that doesn't deal with all of the gripes that I've spoken about. But I mean, if it was my money for a Super Naked, I think I'd buy something like an MT10, because you get almost as much power, but I think you get that little bit more peace of mind.
Well, thank you very much for talking us around your bike.
My pleasure.
And thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next long-term test video coming soon.